Do you feel that you have reached or are close to consensus amongst Labour, Conservative and the Liberal Democrats about what precise powers will be delivered and offered to Scotland?
We've got an agreement on the timetable, so powers will have to be delivered with a draft bill in January. What we've now got to get agreement on is all the powers. I think there's a general agreement about the devolution of more tax powers, about the devolution of housing benefit, of social care powers for attendance allowance. I'm saying to the Conservatives this morning they've got to get more radical on the powers because they should include what Labour has proposed and the Liberals have proposed. That's the work programme, infrastructure investment, transport and the rail services. It's got to include the environment and land use, and it's got to include the enforcement of employment, health and safety and other equalities legislation. Now, if we did that, I think we could get an agreement on very extensive powers, a powerhouse parliament, and I think we could move forward pretty quickly, accepting that we want to stay part of the United Kingdom.
So you see the Conservatives as foot-dragging?
I think on this particular issue, the set of powers, they're making a mistake. They're not radical enough. I think they've got to get real, however, on another issue, which is income tax. It just does not make sense to devolve 100% of income tax to the Scottish Parliament, which would mean, for example, that the UK services that Scotland gets, like pensions, Scotland would not be contributing any income tax. And it doesn't make sense to do what Mr Cameron suggested the day after the referendum, that Scottish MPs would be second-class citizens at Westminster, unable to vote on certain key issues like the income tax rate. So the Conservatives have got it wrong. I think they're 100% wrong on this 100% devolution of income tax. They've got to understand that their measures are a gift to the separatists. They would play into the hands of the Nationalist Party. They would drive a wedge between Scotland and England and make the constitution unstable. And I'll be saying that during the course of this week when I put forward my own proposals about how we can solve this problem.
But would you go further and say the Conservatives are playing a political game here to embarrass Labour with all those Scottish MPs to try to neutralise them when it comes to voting in the House of Commons?
Well, I would like us all to rise above party advantage and indeed above driving a wedge between Scotland and England. You see, in the United Kingdom, England is about 84% of the United Kingdom. Scotland's 8%, Wales is 5%, Northern Ireland's 3%. And you've got to find a fair distribution of power that recognises the majority rule, but also recognises the minorities and that they have special needs that have to be met. Now, if you do that, I think you'll come up with a solution that does not include the 100% devolution of income tax, but perhaps 75%. And you will not withdraw Scottish members of Parliament and make them second-class citizens at Westminster. And I think the Conservatives have got to realise that what is at stake here is the future of the United Kingdom. It is still fragile. There are lots of grievances as a result of what Mr Cameron said the day after the referendum. I think he did so in an unstatesmanlike way, and I think he should regret what he did. You cannot, at one and the same time, promise Scotland something on a Tuesday and then change the offer the day after the referendum on the Friday. And I think the Conservatives have got to think again about playing fast and loose with the Constitution.
But they also made offers to the English and others and to English cities. Do you feel that these processes should operate in tandem, as we've heard again today from William Hague, the former Foreign Secretary, saying that English votes on English laws must be a process that continues in the same manner as that which is applying to Scotland?
Yeah, Dermot, let's just be clear what is being proposed here. First of all, I support the devolution of power to the English regions and to the cities. That is a great thing because power can be devolved to where decisions can best be made. So we want to see more decentralisation, more powers to the Welsh Assembly, and we want to see devolution, if you like, all round in the United Kingdom. But what does English votes to English law mean in practice? It means simply this: restricting the rights of Scottish members of Parliament to be first-class citizens at Westminster. And if the Conservatives pursue that, then it's very difficult to see how you can have one United Kingdom and two classes of representation. That, in my view, would be a big mistake. There are things that you can do, there are amendments you can make to the committee system, and there are various other changes that you can consider. But once on big issues, Scottish MPs don't have the same rights to vote as English or Welsh or Northern Irish MPs, I think you've got a problem about the unity of the United Kingdom. And that's why I say don't play fast and loose with the Constitution. Get real about what's necessary to keep the Union together. We did win a decisive vote at 55% in the referendum, but things are still fragile. And, you know, nations can be lost by accident. Unions can disintegrate because mistakes are made. And I would not like to think that the Conservative government is going to make mistakes that will imperil the future of the Union.
But I asked you about the politics of all this. I referred to the number of Scottish Labour MPs. And this is kind of related, isn't it? We've seen SNP membership, we're told, shoot up since the referendum. And a lot of the pollsters are now saying the SNP pose a big threat to many, many Labour seats in Scotland. If there is backsliding, as I put it, on this issue, do you fear that the Scottish voters come the general election may take it out on the Labour Party?
Well, there is no backsliding on the part of me or the Labour Party. We are very clear about the powerhouse parliament we wanted to create. We said it before the referendum. We keep to our promises after the referendum. Indeed, there is a petition signed by 110,000 Scots demanding that the government holds to the powers that were talked about during the referendum campaign. But, you know, if you're thinking about the future of Britain and the future of the United Kingdom as a whole, you've got to rise above political party advantage. You've got to look at what's going to be in the interests of harmony and stability. What is a fair distribution of power? And we have got this unique system in Britain where England is 84% of the Union, but the other members of the Union have got rights, and these, as minority nations in the United Kingdom, have got to have rights. And we've managed to do something quite unique in the Union as well, and that's we've got UK pensions, we've got UK healthcare, we've got UK unemployment benefit. We share our services like we do on defence and security. And the Scottish National Party, in their submission to this commission that has been set up to look at powers, they want to break all that. An end to the UK pension, an end to the UK welfare state, an end to the UK unemployment benefit and the help that is given when regions and nations are in difficulty. And I think we've got to think about what is the most radical distribution of powers we can have, but within the context that people have voted to stay part of the United Kingdom. And I'm determined to do everything in my power to make sure that we keep our promises as part of the United Kingdom.
And just a little bit more about the detail in your mind, Mr Brown. You're saying around about, you reckon, 75% of income tax collected and distributed by the Scottish Parliament. What about VAT and corporation tax?
Yeah, I think you could assign about 50% of VAT revenues. That means that if the Scottish economy started to do better, it would get more VAT revenues. I think on income tax, you don't do 100% of income tax because then Scottish taxpayers would not contribute to the UK services, but you don't do corporation tax, I think, because you don't want to have a divide and rule across the United Kingdom where each region and nation is competing to lower the corporation tax rate to attract firms into the country. I think the idea of one corporation tax rate is important to maintaining the unity of the United Kingdom and stopping this dog-eats-dog competition between the regions and nations. But my proposals add up to 54% of the spending of the Scottish Parliament raised by revenue that it has itself. And, you know, there is no federal system in the world that I know of where 100% of income tax is devolved to the regional level or the national level from the central state.
And I asked Mr Brown about the threat to the Labour Party from the SNP. What about the threat to the Labour Party to UKIP after we saw in the Hayward and Middleton by-election? How do you think Labour should address this core issue of immigration?
Well, Ed Miliband's got a very good article in The Observer today when he talks about these issues. And if you'll forgive me, I don't think it helps for people to be armchair spectators sitting and making comments on every single issue. I've concentrated on something that, after a period of reflection, courtesy of the British electorate, when we've been out of power for 4 years, I've been able to think about what we should do about the future of the United Kingdom, about how we can hold Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland together. And, you know, I was impressed during the referendum campaign how many English people were tweeting and going to meetings and were talking about the importance of the union staying together. So whatever the forces bringing about the rise of UKIP, I still think there is a huge support for keeping the whole of the United Kingdom together. And that's what I'm going to concentrate my energies on talking about and giving views where I think I can make a difference.
Yes, I know, but you want to see the Labour Party re-elected as a UK government. You presumably want to be a part of that. And as part of that process, having held the position yourself...
No, I don't want to be.
Oh, you don't want to be part of it?
I think you've misunderstood me, Dermot. I've said I'm not coming back into frontline politics. I'm not interested in a position on any front bench. I'm not proposing to take a bigger role in the future. I joined the referendum campaign on the no side because I could see the threat to the prospects of my children and the children of Scotland. We were making a decision that was not just for one election, but was for all time. And I felt I had a duty to come back into politics to talk about what I thought was important for the sake of the future of our country. But I'm not proposing, as you suggest, to come back into frontline politics. And I want to give all the support I can to Ed Miliband and to his leadership of the Labour Party. And I believe he wants to concentrate on the big issues. And it's for him to talk for the Labour Party, not for me.
No, I mean, I think you misunderstand me, Mr Brown. All I was suggesting was that, having heard no announcement to the contrary, was that you would stand again to become a Labour MP and hopefully, in your view, part of a Labour Party that is governing for all of the UK. And I wanted to ask you, having held the position yourself, what advice would you give to Mr Miliband about appearing, before the general election, prime ministerial?
I think I misunderstood you, obviously, but you said I wanted to be part of a future Labour government. I'm not proposing to be that, and I'm not coming back into frontline politics. I'm too old to be the comeback kid, as I've said before, and I'm too young to be an elder statesman, and I don't propose to do that. As far as the future of the Labour Party is concerned, it is in good hands with young leaders who've got a very clear idea of what they want to achieve. They focus people's attention on the cost of living and on the perils of an economic recovery that doesn't yield the rise in standards of living that people want. And of course, that in itself is an answer to many of the worries that people have who are expressing concern when they're voting for UKIP and for other parties. And I know Ed Miliband has talked today about his policies on immigration, and I will support him in what he says.
OK, Mr Brown, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Gordon Brown there.
Thank you.